She changed her name, moved across the country, and spent 3 years looking over her shoulder. Sienna thought she had finally escaped her terrifying past. But when the mysterious new CEO of her firm walked into the boardroom, her blood ran cold. The ruthless Korean syndicate boss wasn't just her new employer, he was the husband she ran away from. This is not a Hollywood script. This is the terrifying reality of what happened in downtown Chicago in the winter of 2023. For 3 years, Sienna Caldwell believed she was a ghost. She had meticulously constructed a quiet, pristine life out of the ashes of a nightmare. Every morning at 7:15 a.m., she bought a black drip coffee from the Intelligentsia on Jackson Boulevard. By 7:45 a.m., she was scanning her keycard at the towering glass doors of Meridian Trust, a boutique private wealth management firm on LaSalle Street. As a senior portfolio manager, she handled millions of dollars for Chicago's elite. She wore tailored navy suits, kept her natural hair in an immaculate silk press, and spoke with a calm, authoritative cadence that made older, wealthy clients trust her implicitly. Sienna was respected, she was safe, and most importantly, she was entirely untraceable, or so she thought. The woman currently known as Sienna Caldwell was born Nia Jenkins. 5 years ago, in the neon-drenched high-rises of New York City, she had made the catastrophic mistake of falling in love with a man named Gabriel Pierce. Despite his exclusively Western name, Gabriel was full-blooded Korean, the sole heir to one of the most brutal and clandestine organized crime syndicates operating on the eastern seaboard, a faction of the Kakongpai that had modernized into a corporate empire. When they met, Gabriel was charming, intensely protective, and shrouded in a dangerous allure that drew her in. But marriage to a mafia boss stripped away the glamour in a matter of months. Sienna didn't just witness backroom deals, she witnessed the blood. The final straw came on a rainy Tuesday in October when she accidentally walked into the basement of their upstate estate and saw Gabriel executing a rival lieutenant with his bare hands, his usually immaculate face splattered with crimson. That night, with the help of an underground fixer named Jeremiah, she ran. She left behind her identity, her phone, and her wedding ring, fleeing with nothing but a go bag and raw terror. For 3 years, her heart pounded every time a black SUV slowed down on the street. But as the months turned into years, the paranoia began to fade. Gabriel hadn't found her. The ghost life had worked. Until the buyout. It started as corporate whispers in the break room. Meridian Trust was drowning in quiet debt, and a massive international conglomerate, Aegis Global, had stepped in for an aggressive acquisition. The transition had been ruthless and swift. The previous board was dissolved in a week, and the new CEO of Aegis Global was flying in from New York to personally oversee the restructuring. I heard he fired the entire Seattle branch via email. Her direct supervisor, Nathaniel, muttered as he paced outside the boardroom on the 42nd floor. Nathaniel was sweating through his expensive dress shirt. They say he doesn't do second chances. If you don't fit his vision, you're out. Sienna, you have the highest performing portfolio. You need to do the talking today. I've got it, Nate. Relax, Sienna said, adjusting her watch. Her pulse was steady. She was good at her job. She knew how to handle intimidating corporate executives. At exactly 9 a.m., the private executive elevator chimed. The heavy mahogany doors of the boardroom were propped open. A team of 3 men in charcoal suits stepped out. First security, clearly. And then the new owner walked in. Sienna was reviewing a printed balance sheet. She heard the soft, authoritative click of expensive leather shoes on the hardwood floor. She smelled it before she even looked up. A custom blend of bergamot, black pepper, and Tom Ford oud. A scent that she had spent 3 years trying to scrub from her memory. Her breath hitched. The air in her lungs turned to broken glass. She slowly raised her eyes from the paperwork. Standing at the head of the long oak table, buttoning the jacket of a bespoke Brioni suit, was Gabriel Pierce. He hadn't changed. His jawline was still sharp enough to cut diamond, his pitch-black hair perfectly styled, his dark, calculating eyes scanning the room with the detached coldness of a predator. He possessed a terrifyingly calm aura, the kind of quiet authority that immediately sucked the oxygen out of the room. Sienna's heart slammed against her ribs like a trapped bird. Her hands, resting on the table, began to violently tremble. She quickly pulled them into her lap, digging her manicured nails so hard into her own skin that it drew blood. Run! Get up and run! Her instincts screamed at her, but her legs were paralyzed. She was trapped on the 42nd floor of a glass skyscraper. Gabriel's dark eyes swept across the terrified executives, one by one, and then they stopped on her. For a fraction of a second, the corporate mask slipped. A terrifying, possessive darkness flared in his eyes. He didn't look surprised. He looked victorious. Good morning. Gabriel's voice was smooth, a low baritone that vibrated straight through Sienna's spine. I am Gabriel Pierce, and as of this morning, I own every asset, every contract, and every employee in this building. He didn't break eye contact with Sienna as he said the last three words. The meeting was an hour of pure psychological torture. Gabriel commanded the room with lethal precision, dismantling Meridian Trust's previous financial strategies without ever raising his voice. Every time he spoke, his gaze drifted back to Sienna, pinning her to her leather chair. Nathaniel, completely oblivious to the silent warfare happening across the table, nudged Sienna to present her portfolio. She stood up. Her legs felt like lead. Her throat was bone dry. Mr. Pierce, she started, her voice betraying a slight tremor that only he would recognize. The high-yield accounts under my supervision have maintained a 12% growth margin. Gabriel leaned back in his chair, steepling his long fingers. She noticed the faint, white scar across his right knuckle, the same knuckle she had seen shatter a man's jaw. Impressive, Gabriel interrupted smoothly. Miss Caldwell, is it? He said her fake name like it was a private joke, savoring the syllables on his tongue. Yes, Sienna Caldwell, she lied, her chin tilting up in a desperate show of defiance. Well, Miss Caldwell, Gabriel said, standing up and walking slowly around the table until he was standing just inches behind her chair. The proximity made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She could feel the heat radiating off him. Given your outstanding performance, I will require you to act as my direct liaison during this transition. You will report directly to me, exclusively. Nathaniel beamed, thinking his team had just secured their jobs. Sienna felt a cold sweat break out across her spine. I'm afraid my current client load won't allow for that level of administrative work, sir, she forced out, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. Gabriel leaned down. His lips brushed the shell of her ear, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her. That wasn't a request. Nana. Nana, his private Korean pet name for her. The room spun. When the meeting finally adjourned, the executives scrambled out, eager to escape Gabriel's suffocating presence. Sienna practically ran to the women's restroom. She locked herself in a stall, clutching her chest as a full-blown panic attack ripped through her. How did he find her? She had used burner phones. She had paid cash. She had completely erased her digital footprint. Jeremiah was supposed to be the best ghost maker in the underworld. I have to leave right now, she thought frantically. Forget the apartment. Forget the bank accounts. Go to Union Station. Get on a train to Canada. Disappear again. She splashed cold water on her face, grabbed her briefcase, and hurried toward her private office to grab her passport, which she kept locked in her bottom drawer for emergencies, exactly like this. The firm was eerily quiet. Everyone had gone to an impromptu lunch to decompress. When Sienna pushed open the frosted glass door to her corner office, she froze. The blinds were drawn. The lights were off. Gabriel was sitting in her leather desk chair, casually flipping through a framed photo of her standing by Lake Michigan. Sienna backed away toward the door, but two of his massive security men stepped out of the shadows in the hallway, quietly pulling the heavy door shut behind her. The lock clicked. They were alone. Gabriel placed the photo face down on the desk. He stood up slowly, stalking toward her like a panther. Sienna backed up until her spine hit the heavy oak door. 3 years, Gabriel said softly. There was no anger in his voice, which somehow made it infinitely worse. It was chillingly calm. 3 years, Nia. Do you have any idea what it cost me to let you play this little game of corporate dress-up? Gabriel, please, she whispered, her voice breaking. Let me go. I haven't told anyone. I haven't spoken to the police. I swear to God. Shh, he murmured, stopping right in front of her. He reached out, his cool fingers gently tracing the line of her jaw. She flinched, but he didn't pull away. He cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing over her trembling lower lip. You really thought you could hide from me? Me? How did you find me? A tear slipped down her cheek. Gabriel chuckled darkly. I never lost you, my love. I've known where you were since the day you stepped off that bus in Chicago. I bought the apartment building you live in 2 years ago. The barista who makes your coffee. He's on my payroll. Sienna stared at him in absolute horror. Her entire life, her freedom, her safety had been an illusion, a terrarium he had built for her. Why? She choked out. Why let me run? Why now? Because you needed to cool off, Gabriel stated, as if discussing a business strategy. You saw something you shouldn't have seen. You were terrified. If I had dragged you back kicking and screaming, you would have hated me. I gave you time to build a life, and now I've come to collect what belongs to me. I don't belong to you! Sienna snapped, a sudden burst of anger piercing her fear. She shoved his hand away. I am leaving! You can't kidnap me from a high rise in the middle of downtown Chicago. I will scream. I will quit. Gabriel didn't look angry. He just smiled a cold, predatory smirk. He walked back to her desk and picked up a thick manila folder he had brought with him. He tossed it onto the glass coffee table. I figured you'd be stubborn, he said smoothly. Open it. Sienna hesitated, then took a step forward. With trembling hands, she opened the folder. Inside were banking records, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, massive wire transfers, shell company registrations, and at the bottom of every single document, authorizing the movement of millions of dollars of cartel blood money, was her signature. What is this? She breathed. I never signed these. You did, actually, Gabriel said casually, checking his watch. When we were married. You signed a lot of blank documents for the estate planning, remember? My lawyers have been very busy. Right now, on paper, Sienna Caldwell is the primary launderer for the Golden Dragon Syndicate. Sienna felt the floor drop out from under her. If you walk out that door, Gabriel continued, his voice dropping into a lethal, velvet whisper, I don't need to kidnap you. I will simply send this file to the FBI. They will arrest you before you make it to the train station. You'll spend the rest of your life in federal prison. And in prison, Nia, accidents happen to rats. He walked over to her, completely invading her space, his chest pressing against hers. He leaned down, inhaling the scent of her hair, wrapping one strong arm around her waist to pull her flush against his tailored suit. You have two choices, Gabriel murmured against her ear. You walk out that door, and your life is over. Or you sit down at that desk, you do your job, and you come home with your husband tonight. Because you are mine, Nia. You always have been. The black Cadillac Escalade carved its way through the dense traffic of the Magnificent Mile, its tinted windows turning the vibrant Chicago afternoon into a muted gray blur. Sienna sat rigidly in the back seat, the plush leather offering no comfort. Gabriel sat beside her, an impenetrable fortress of dark wool and silent authority. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. The manila folder resting on the seat between them was an invisible chain, heavier than any iron shackle. They arrived at the St. Regis Chicago, a towering architectural marvel of glass that pierced the skyline. Gabriel didn't guide her to the lobby. The SUV descended into a private, subterranean garage, where an exclusive elevator whisked them directly to the penthouse. When the brass doors parted, Sienna stepped into a sprawling, multi-million-dollar fortress in the sky. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a dizzying, panoramic view of Lake Michigan and Navy Pier. The interior was a masterpiece of cold, calculated luxury dark marble floors, charcoal velvet furniture, and minimalist modern art. It looked exactly like Gabriel, beautiful, expensive, and entirely devoid of warmth. Your belongings from your apartment in the Gold Coast have already been moved to the primary suite, Gabriel said, tossing his suit jacket onto a sleek obsidian console table. He unbuttoned his cuffs and rolled up his sleeves, revealing the intricate, sprawling ink of a dragon tattoo that coiled up his left forearm, the undisputed mark of his syndicate rank. You packed my things? Sienna asked, her voice trembling with a potent cocktail of fear and outrage. You violated my home? Your home was compromised, Nia, Gabriel replied calmly. Walking over to a wet bar to pour 2 fingers of Macallan, he offered her the glass. She ignored it. He drank it himself, his dark eyes never leaving her face. You should be thanking me. If I hadn't stepped in today, you wouldn't be standing here arguing with me. You'd be at the bottom of the Chicago River. Sienna scoffed, crossing her arms defensively. Stop trying to play the hero, Gabriel. You blackmailed me. You forged my signature to launder cartel money so you could trap me here. Don't act like this is a rescue mission. Gabriel set the crystal glass down with a sharp times clack times that echoed through the cavernous room. In 2 long strides, he crossed the distance between them. Sienna backed up instinctively, but he caught her waist, his large hand gripping her hip with a bruising, possessive intensity. He backed her against the cold glass of the window. 42 stories below, the city crawled like ants. Do you really think I need to forge documents to keep you? Gabriel's voice dropped to a dangerous, vibrating frequency. He leaned in, his breath fanning across her collarbone. I am the head of the largest syndicate on the East Coast. If I wanted to kidnap you, I would have thrown you in the trunk of a car 3 years ago. The documents are real, Nia, but I didn't create them. Sienna froze. Her heart skipped a violent beat. What are you talking about? Gabriel released her, running a hand through his immaculately styled hair, a rare gesture of frustration. Leo Mercer. The name sent a shiver down Sienna's spine. Leo Mercer was Gabriel's former underboss, a ruthless and ambitious man with a penchant for extreme violence. He was the one who had introduced Gabriel to the underground casino operations. He was also the man whose men, Sienna, had seen Gabriel execute in the basement of their New York estate all those years ago. Leo staged a coup 6 months ago, Gabriel explained, pacing the length of the room. He fractured the syndicate. He couldn't get to me directly, so he started looking for my weaknesses. It took him 3 years, but his hackers finally breached your fixer's firewall. Jeremiah is dead, Nia. Sienna gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Jeremiah, the gruff, chain-smoking underground contact who had given her a new social security number and a fighting chance, was gone. Leo found the shell companies we set up when we were first married, the ones I put in your name to protect my assets, Gabriel continued, his jaw tight. He manipulated the ledgers. He framed you as the primary architect of a massive embezzlement scheme, stealing millions from the cartel's collective pot. To half the syndicate, you aren't just my runaway wife anymore. You are a thief who stole from the family. The terrifying reality crashed over Sienna like a tidal wave. The manila folder at the office wasn't Gabriel's blackmail. It was his proof. Leo sent a hit squad to Chicago, Gabriel said softly, closing the distance between them once more. This time, his touch was surprisingly gentle as he tucked a stray lock of her hair behind her ear. They arrived yesterday. They had your apartment staked out. They had the Meridian Trust building wired. When I bought Aegis Global and dissolved your board today, it wasn't to punish you, Nana. It was the only way I could get my private security contractors into that building to neutralize his men without sparking a public shootout. Sienna stared up into the dark, bottomless eyes of the man she had run from. He wasn't the monster chasing her in the dark. He was the monster standing at the door, keeping the other wolves at bay. You, she stammered, the adrenaline draining from her body, leaving her dizzy. You saved my life. I am your husband, Gabriel stated, as if it were an immutable law of physics. What is mine, I protect. No one touches you. Not the feds. Not Leo Mercer. No one. But the chilling promise in his eyes also meant one undeniable truth. He would never let her go again. For 2 weeks, Sienna lived in the St. Regis penthouse. It was a gilded cage of the highest order. She had unrestricted access to a private chef, boundless credit cards, and a wardrobe that Gabriel had personally curated to replace the corporate suits she used to wear. But there were 2 armed guards outside the elevator at all times, and Gabriel was a constant, suffocating shadow. The dynamic between them was a volatile mixture of unresolved anger and a magnetic, undeniable tension. During the day, Gabriel ran his brutal empire from the dining room table, barking orders into burner phones while Sienna watched from the kitchen. At night, they slept in the same massive California king bed. He never forced himself on her, but he always slept with his arm wrapped tightly around her waist, anchoring her to him in the dark. The final fracture in Sienna's resistance happened on a violently stormy Tuesday night. Gabriel was supposed to be at a sit down with a local Chicago faction. Sienna was reading on the velvet sofa, listening to the thunder rattle the reinforced glass windows. The penthouse was quiet, too quiet. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died. The hum of the central air conditioner cut out. Sienna sat up in the pitch black, her pulse accelerating. The emergency backup generators should have kicked in instantly. A second later, a deafening crack times, echoed from the foyer. The heavy oak doors of the penthouse had been blown off their hinges. Flashlights cut through the darkness, accompanied by the heavy, tactical footsteps of multiple men. Sweep the rooms! Find the girl! A gruff voice barked. Panic seized Sienna's throat. Leo Mercer's men. They had bypassed Gabriel's security. She scrambled off the sofa, her bare feet silent on the plush rug, and darted toward the primary bedroom. She remembered Gabriel kept a loaded 9mm in the biometric safe hidden behind the walk-in closet mirror. She made it to the closet just as the bedroom door kicked open. She held her breath, pressing herself into the absolute darkest corner behind a row of winter coats. Two men in tactical gear stepped in, their assault rifles raised. Just as one of the men reached out to slide the closet door fully open, a shadow dropped from the air duct above the hallway. It was Gabriel. He moved with a terrifying, lethal fluidity that Sienna had only witnessed once before. He didn't use a gun, he used a combat knife. In total silence, he dispatched the first man, dragging him backward into the dark hallway. The second man spun around at the noise, firing a wild burst of bullets that shattered the bedroom mirror into 1,000 jagged pieces. Sienna screamed as glass rained down on her. Gabriel lunged into the room, tackling the shooter to the ground. A brutal, desperate hand-to-hand fight ensued in the dark. Sienna could hear the sickening crunch of bone and heavy, grunting breaths. Finally, a single gunshot rang out, and the room went dead silent. Trembling uncontrollably, Sienna crawled out from the closet. The emergency backup lights finally flickered on, casting the bedroom in a dim, eerie amber glow. Gabriel was kneeling on the floor, breathing heavily. The two assassins were dead. But as Gabriel stood up, he staggered. He pressed a hand to his left side, and thick, dark blood began to seep through the fabric of his white dress shirt. Gabriel! Sienna cried out, rushing to his side. She caught his arm just as his knees buckled, using her body weight to ease him onto the edge of the ruined bed. I'm fine, he gritted out through clenched teeth, though his face was rapidly draining of color. How many? Did you see anyone else? No, just these two. Sienna panicked, pressing both of her hands hard against the gunshot wound on his abdomen to stem the bleeding. The hot, sticky blood coated her palms. We need to call an ambulance. No hospitals, Gabriel gasped, his hand covering hers, his grip still incredibly strong. A cleaner team is already on the way. The building is locked down. He looked up at her. Despite the pain, his dark eyes searched her face frantically, looking for any sign of injury. Are you hurt? Nia, did they touch you? I'm fine. I'm fine, she sobbed, pressing harder on the wound. Why did you come back early? You were supposed to be at the meeting. It was a setup, he breathed out, his head resting back against the headboard. As soon as I realized, I drove straight back. I thought I was too late. Sienna stared at the ruthless mafia boss bleeding out on the bed. For 3 years, she had viewed him as the ultimate villain of her story. She had run from his violence, terrified of the darkness he carried. But tonight, that darkness had bled for her. He had walked into a death trap and fought his way through an ambush, just to ensure she was safe. You're a fool, she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks, ruining her perfectly pressed hair. You could have died. Gabriel offered a faint, bloody smile. He raised a trembling hand, tracing the tear track on her cheek, heedless of the blood smearing her skin. I told you, what's mine, I protect. I would burn this whole city to ash before I let them touch you. In that chaotic, blood-soaked moment, Sienna realized the terrifying truth. She could never go back to being Sienna Caldwell. Meridian Trust, the drip coffee, the quiet, safe life. It was all a fragile illusion. Her reality was here, in the blood and the shadows, with a man whose love was as lethal as a loaded gun. She didn't want to run anymore. When the cleaner team arrived with an underground trauma surgeon 20 minutes later, Gabriel was slipping out of consciousness. The head of security, a towering man named Bennett, looked at Sienna. Ma'am, we need to move him. We can arrange transport for you to a safe house immediately. You can disappear again. He won't know. Sienna looked down at her blood-stained hands, and then at the unconscious face of her husband. The door to freedom was wide open. But she shook her head, her spine straightening as she stepped fully into the role she had abandoned 3 years ago. I'm not going anywhere, Bennett, Sienna ordered, her voice cold, authoritative, and completely void of fear. Save my husband, and find out exactly where Leo Mercer is hiding. Because when Gabriel wakes up, we are going to war. What an absolutely gripping tale of betrayal, survival, and a love that is as dangerous as it is undeniable. Sienna's transformation from a terrified runaway to a fierce, protective queen shows that sometimes you can't outrun your destiny. You just have to conquer it. If you were on the edge of your seat during this mafia romance thriller, smash that like button, share this story with your fellow drama lovers, and subscribe to our channel for more intense, heart-pounding stories. Who do you think will win the Syndicate War? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.